The best way to learn a language? Immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts and help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations, and their tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Blue Wire. That's 60% off at babbel.com/Blue Wire, spelled BABBEL.com/Blue Wire. Rules and restrictions apply.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Wednesday night, May 15th, 2024, as we record this episode in the Chicago White Sox. Thanks to excellent pitching performances from Erick Fedde and Garrett Crochet again, shut out the Washington Nationals in back-to-back games to win another series. Since Tommy Pham has joined the White Sox back on April 26th, the White Sox are 11-8. Remember, they started 3-22. I kind of wish Pham was with the White Sox on opening day if his influence is contagious and has his White Sox team playing much better. We're going to recap what went well for the White Sox against the Nationals, also touch on the Korey Lee versus Martin Maldonado playing time issue again, rave about Fedde and Crochet as they continue to be good for the White Sox, ponder if Fedde is actually the White Sox best trade chip, even considering Luis Robert returning soon. But while things are going well for the White Sox, the hell stretch has arrived. In the next 39 games, the Chicago White Sox will face 4 of the current division leaders, 3 current wildcard teams, and 21 of those 39 games are on the road. Currently, the White Sox are 4-16 on the road this season, so it can get ugly real quick. Or is there a reason of optimism for this stretch? Let's discuss. Joining me now are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margalus. And gentlemen, welcome. The White Sox won 2 out of 3 against the Nationals. They were tied late in Game 1, 3-3, but the Nationals, thanks to the death by 1,000 paper cuts and using the fast model against the White Sox in a faster and more effective way, were able to run away in the 8th inning. They won that game 6-3. But in Game 2, Andrew Vaughn hit 2 homers, and Erick Fedde pitched a gem. They won 4-0. In Game 3, on getaway day, even though Patrick Corbin was on the mound for the Nationals, and that's usually a good thing for opposing offenses, the White Sox offense struggled. They only scored 2 runs, but Garrett Crochet and the White Sox bullpen were excellent again as they won 2-0. As I mentioned in the intro, James, since Tommy Pham has arrived, the White Sox are a winning team. They're 11-8 in the 19 games since he's joined the White Sox. You got a chance to speak to Pham post-game. What has Pham seen from the White Sox since he's joined the ball club?
It's very funny. He said the pitching's been good, and I looked it up, and Pham's played really well. I think, what is it, at a 138 WRC plus right now? I think he's met every expectation. I don't think he's necessarily been good in center field, but he hasn't wrecked games out there. And that was definitely not something I thought was even a possibility when they first signed him, that he could play center field for a prolonged stretch. And he's done better than expected, I guess. But they've had a 3.44 ERA since the Pham joined. If he were a pitching whisperer or calling games, this is something we could attribute to him. But what he said was that it was almost like hearing a Josh Nelson introduction. He's like, we've got a really tough schedule coming up. So like we're gonna have to play like really well. And he said, well, there's a lot we have to work on. Like Pham has been really down to earth, and so he said like things like I can't speak to like what things were like before I got here. I can only speak to why I'm here, but he wasn't like, oh man, it's so positive. We have so much great energy. It's like, oh, no, we've won some games and that's good, but our offense has to get a lot better. And sure enough, it's crunching the numbers, but like it's a sub 300 OBP since he joined. It's a sub 400 slug. It's 5.5% walk rate, which is something he probably begrudges a little bit himself, since he, prides himself in his batting eye, and that's about where he's been. But his full quote is really good. So let me just read it. Too many easy outs. Usually when you swing at the first pitch, you want to get off your A swing. So we have too many first pitch rollovers. It happened to me yesterday, but when you swing at first pitch, man, you're looking to do damage. You're looking to hit the balls 95 mile an hour plus, no jam shots, rollovers, stuff like that. You want to be a tough out. That's something we're trying to improve on as a team. Like, yeah.
It warms my heart that he referenced exit velocity, by the way. Like, thank you, Tommy Pham.
He does that a lot. Like we asked him like how he's feeling at the plate because he in St. Louis because he started off really hot. He was like, I haven't hit anything over 110, so not really that great yet. It's like, all right. So you're interested to know like what statistics the guys latch onto to evaluate himself by. Tommy Pham wants basically blasts and barrels is probably something he would gravitate towards. But there's a lot like there's not an offense that strikes out a ton, but it's definitely an offense where you saw Patrick Corbin get pretty deep on a low pitch count today, and certainly was the case. Who was the starting pitcher the other day? But like what's his face was able to get into the sevens for the Nationals earlier this week, and especially like their bottom of the order, it's a lot of like it's poor hitters, but it's also guys who tend to like go hacking at the first strike they see and put it in play very weakly. And that's almost less productive than striking out a ton with kind of a wackadoodle approach or big holes in the swing. It's just a lot of weak contact. And you can have a 9-hitter who kind of puts the ball in play and moves stuff around, and that's can be serviceable its own way, but they'll have entire innings of that where it's just hard from the rack up a big pitch count. And you can kind of watch one of their innings breeze by and think like, what was the plan for success here? Because they just don't have there's not kind of the complementary types of hitters that are allowing them to string together rallies or pose real threats multiple innings. It's more one or two turns to the order that where you'll see them kind of string together, or Paul DeYoung runs into one. It's a better offense. They have a chance to score, as previous times that was an issue early in the season, but it's not one that consistently threatens the opposition and really wasn't built to. Obviously, this is a rebuilding year. Obviously, they don't have that much offensive talent, but it's something that certainly presses on the mind of when you're asking a 36-year-old to be positive about this team that's about to go play the AL East a bunch. It's clearly something he's concerned about.
What's his face that you were thinking is Mitchell Parker, right, Jim? That was the Nationals pitcher, game 2.
I was thinking like what's his face was Logan Allen in the Cleveland series, 6.40 ERA, pitching 6 solid innings. So that was the what's his face I went to, not Nationals, but the recent humbling experience of the Logan Allen 6 innings.
Yeah, Trevor Williams only got through 5, so I guess he's not the what's his face I'm looking for. But Mitchell Allen was very efficient. Really only like getting into the bases loaded, nobody out jammed, threw him out more than pitch count. Even though he has like 5 career starts.
Tommy Pham, since he's joined the White Sox, as James references weighted runs created plus. Pham's hitting .319 with a .365 on base percentage, slugging .464. He's got 2 homers, 10 RBIs in 17 games, and 4 doubles. And it makes me wonder, Jim, because we talked about this in a previous podcast episode, like Tommy Pham wasn't even plan A for the White Sox. Like Robbie Grossman.
Plan G.
Plan G. And it just kind of makes me wonder, like, I don't know if Pham would have accepted the offer from the White Sox prior to opening day, but I kind of wish we could maybe simulate how the first 25 games would have went if Tommy Pham was on the White Sox since opening day, because I think he has provided a nice spark to the White Sox offense. He's just a competent major league hitter for a team that doesn't have a lot of competent hitters.
And he's serious about it too, in a way that's not like Paul Konerko serious to where it looks like he's going to, it looks like a miserable toil and can't wait for 162 games to pass so he can get to, playing hockey or something like that in the off season. He looks like it's business, but he takes pride in doing a job well. And, maybe that intensity has caused some problems at previous stops. And I wondered if it would cause problems here because you have a team that's largely aimless and there isn't a shared goal aside from everybody trying to keep what might be the last major league contracts they get. I figured it could have gone worse early on if Pham played okay and everybody else continued to more or less not mail it in because I think they're trying, but just play like they're mailing it in, and you get this untenable situation, this conflict that results in Pham exploding or rubbing people the wrong way. But seems like it's broken the right way in that Pham is leading by example and everybody's paying attention. Grifol is pumping him up in terms of what he's bringing, and so that's probably the best case scenario for Pham. And for me, it doesn't make me wonder what the season would have been like if he were on the roster opening day, but it makes me wonder what kind of impact he might have had in previous seasons, like all the other times Rick Hahn swung and missed at right field. And when you see Pham show up 1 month into the season on a minor league deal that was basically major league, but officially on a minor league deal, and play like he's always played, or maybe on the better end of how he's always played, whereas Hahn jumped the market to get guys like Adam Eaton the second time and Nomar Mazara, and committed to bad ideas for months before trying another plan. Every time I think, that Hahn wasn't as bad as I thought, or Hahn and Williams weren't as bad as I thought, at the end, there's just another thing that pops up right field. They ran so fast and enthusiastically into terrible ideas and never learned. And so seeing Pham show up and just let's see if, he wants to play for us. And, if he does well, he'll find a job somewhere else, and seems like it's working.
Yeah, I'm sure, based on this conversation, Pham gets traded next week to a contender, especially a team that maybe has a serious injury in the outfield, and they could use Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time. White Sox
I wonder if he can build up more of a market for him than with Robbie Grossman, because Grossman's kind of like a one-trick pony, gets on base, doesn't hit for power, doesn't really play defense. So to get anything for him that might be of interest, makes sense to trade him as earliest possible opportunity. But Pham, the way he's playing, and generally a pretty reliable player in terms of availability and such, I don't know if they have to flip him while he's hot. They could probably wait for just a couple of teams to compete and raise an offer, I think.
Once they had Pham, also they were basically Luis Roberts' return away from never really playing Grossman again. Mm-hmm. So I think that was probably a factor in it.
If you think the Fanatics jerseys are awful, their jersey options are also bad, because I was about to buy a Tommy Pham jersey just to join my collection along with my Daniel Palka jersey that I have, and just fond memories of White Sox outfielders that had a good stretch. Didn't last long. In Pham's case, he's not going to last long because he's going to play for another team prior the trade deadline in late July. But I appreciate what Pham has provided to the White Sox so far. And since he's joined the last 19 games, the White Sox are 11-8. That's been quite the surprise. Another surprise has been Korey Lee. And Korey Lee continues to hit. As we record this episode for the season, when Korey Lee couldn't hit anything at the end of last season, and we had serious doubts about Lee and his chances of being a major leaguer, is currently hitting .309 with a .341 on base percentage, slugging .494. Lee has 4 homers and 10 RBIs. And he caught a shutout in the White Sox finale against the Washington Nationals on Wednesday afternoon. Pedro Grifol was asked about Lee's playing time, as he and Martin Maldonado, their playing time has been pretty split 50-50.
Well, when you got a guy like Maldonado that is so prepared behind the plate, I'm comfortable with both those guys. Obviously, when we play Korey, we get offensive, production as well. I think Maldi can give you that at times, but what you get with Maldi is, you get the preparation, the instincts. And I'm not saying you don't do it with, you don't get that with Korey, but it's a really good balance to not to have to overload Korey right now. It's a really good balance. I can't stress that enough. And I know people want to see Korey play every single day, but that's not in his best interest right now, and in reality, not in ours either, because we have a lot of development to do with him. And, the easiest thing to do is just, okay, go to, get in there, but it doesn't really work that way.
Now, Martin Maldonado, which up in arms for White Sox fans, is hitting 101. That's right. His batting average is above 100. His on-base percentage is 162, and he's slugging 159. Ozzie Guillen was asked this question on Mulliet Hall on 670 The Score, and in a way was kind of mocking Grifol's thinking, like, hey, great, Maldonado talks to pitchers. What a talent when it comes to managing pitchers. And the last part of Grifol's comment, James, because we have a lot of development to do with him and him being Lee, the easiest thing to do is say, okay, get in there, but it doesn't really work that way. And Jim, I might be making a mistake here. James, I'm going to give Pedro Grifol the benefit of the doubt before we jump on him and what he said in this sound clip. Is it possible for the White Sox to overexpose Korey Lee by playing him too much at this time?
Maybe. Their spoken position is that they feel like he got here to where he was by like putting a measured amount on his plate, and that he's going through tons of meetings every day on game planning and pitch calling and shadowing what Maldonado's doing for prep, on top of like the changes he made to his swing and, the work he's doing at Drew Buteros' footwork that, has produced, he didn't have a great day with his exchanges today or Wednesday. But at least the last time I bought the check, he was like top pop time in baseball. Maldonado was surprisingly not bad. That because he's doing so much and learning so much right now, and there's so much work they're putting behind him, that they don't want to just depart from the process that brought them here and say like, well, he's hitting, so just ride him into the ground. I think probably like everyday usage, like his offense would regress a little bit, some combination of like exposure to the league and also just like catchers put a ton of mileage and workload on his legs, and it might, sap a little bit from him if you really revved up the workload in some way that he hadn't experienced a ton before. I think it's possible. I also think Pedro probably tends to overcook a little bit how much like everything is like how much they're prepping everybody and how many meetings everybody's in. He pretty much can't bring up anything Lee does defensively without like giving Drew Butera credit for it, which Drew Butera seems great. Talked to him a couple of times. He seems to know his stuff. I thought it was a great hire, especially to pry him away from another org in a similar position. That seemed like a great sign. It just, I don't know if I can give like full, like this is some big departure from anything else another catcher across the league or another young catcher they're dealing with. Korey Lee's 25. He's not, Edgar Caro was called up straight from AA. He's not completely inexperienced with the majors. He'd been called up with the Astros before, even last year. So it does seem like a little bit laying it on thick. I think the more unspoken thing is like, they definitely feel that like Maldonado is meaningfully better than a pitch caller or game manager than Lee is. And I don't really have a reason to doubt them. There have been anecdotal moments where I've noticed like people not happy with the sequencing after he did. And I think the counterpoint to that was like, that's how he's going to learn. These games don't mean anything, but it's something that a manager getting through the season has to mediate, like the frustration level of people dealing with like the rookies lumps and stuff like that. I just think there are like several outside factors that are making this even more of a tenuous situation they have to manage. Like one is like they've been hitting a little bit better, but this is the worst offense in baseball. How picky can they be about the playing time for like a guy who's managing that over or 800 OPS? DH, it's not like Eloy's out hitting him first base. He's done it before in the minors. There's ways to get his bat in the lineup that maybe like I'd at least love to have them say like, yeah, we consider it like putting like the 800 OPS hitter for our team that can't score 4 runs a game very frequently. And the other thing is like, if Maldonado was like all defense, gave up the bat, it'd be one thing. But like he's all pitch calling. Like the framing's bad. The pop time is like meaningfully worse than Lee's. The pitch blocking is not great. Like it's just this one thing, and having everyone buy into like this one intangible is overriding everything else, and not just like is catcher an offensive position or not. It makes it a tougher sell. I think definitely the previous front office was overshaded to the other side of like, let's try to squeeze offense out of the catcher position and we'll just deal with everything else, or we'll power through the other thing else, or we'll outscore people. And that's why we'll deal with whatever, kinks come with Yasmani Grandal or Wellington Castillo's defense. But this swing to a level the other way, that's beyond anyone's ever seen. I don't know if we've seen a catcher just like be the primary starter with a 300 OPS for a full season. I think it's a bit harder. And I think with the way Lee is performing offensively, it's not necessarily like don't see the value of Maldonado's catching or anything like that, but it's like, don't you have to do something to respond to like how valuable he is to make him more than a part-time player?
Yeah, it feels like when it comes to Maldonado, like they're such different players, or almost like mutually exclusive players, to where you can't praise Lee, because if you praise Lee, then you're admitting Maldonado's bad. So you have to emphasize the only thing Maldonado does at the expense of everything else, to where like it's almost to the point where Pedro Grifol says catchers aren't supposed to hit. When Korey Lee gets a single through the right side, I get angry. Why is he showing up Maldonado? Like he doesn't understand the code here. And it's not what he's saying, but when you have to emphasize that one skill and you're willing to play with like 24 outs or 22 outs, because you just have to eat Maldonado's 3 or 4 plate appearances in a game, it just throws the whole conversation out of whack, to where like either Lee has the world's worst intangibles, and the more that goes unsaid, or at least the way they talk around it and the way they pump up Maldonado and his 300 OPS, -7 OPS plus, you just have to, it invites questions of like, why do they hate Lee so much? And maybe they don't hate him, but they're managing him like they do by playing the guy who offers nothing that anybody can see. So that's kind of where I don't get it, is, it seems like they almost, by the way they talk him down at every opportunity, or the way they defray credit when he catches a good game, or he's behind the plate. It's almost like he's behind the plate for a game that was good versus he's catching a good game. Whereas Maldonado, like anytime, they hold a team under 4 runs, like he's the reason why they did that. It's very strange. And that was my concern when they signed Maldonado. Is it's one thing when he plays and bats 9th for a team that's very good, and everybody can, lean on the intangibles like they did in Houston. Dusty Baker, more than others, I think, in the Houston organization. And you can at least get it, or at least live with it. But when you have 3 other lineup spots, like when the lineup includes Zach Remillard and Braden Shoemake, and then you have like Maldonado in there, all of a sudden you're playing with like a 6-man lineup, and something's got to give, you would think. And what they give is just more at bats, and it doesn't add up. So that's what I think is just strange about it, is for all of the good that Lee is doing, nobody seems particularly happy about it. And, given that he's not replacing somebody who's a fixture, it's not like, say Paul Konerko at the end of his career, when, I didn't care for the retirement tour he went on. Like, I'd rather have those at bats go to Marcus Semien to see what he could do. But like, you get it because of all the, everything he did for the organization. Maldonado has done, nothing for the organization, like on a grand scale. So to see like, a younger player not get, maybe the praise he's due, or at least the encouraging words he seems like he's due, is either like excessively deferential to Maldonado, or it just, makes me wonder what the hell is Lee doing wrong.
It creates like weird incentives because like Pedro has gone out of his way because he feels like he has to defend him to like praise Maldonado's handling of the game, like in his little preamble. So Tuesday night when Kopech was wild in the ninth and Maldonado went out there, like Pedro went with a big thing about Maldonado like settling him down and how that was such a great mound visit. And so Kopech strikes out the first batter Wednesday, and Lee goes out there to talk to him. I was like, he's got to feel like he has to. Like, that's what you do. You got to talk to Kopech sometime in the middle of the ninth and calm him down. Like, that's what good catchers do. But yeah, it's today, like with Lee catches a shutout, and then we ask about like, oh, he must have done a great job. It's like, well, he does, but Maldonado is a great pitch caller, and like we just have a nice little balance. So it's like you can never, you can't. It's like talking about your children a little bit.
Yeah, Maldonado's mound visit was a great moment of leadership. Lee's mound visit was derivative and uninspired.
Out of qualified catchers in Major League Baseball when it comes to framing minimum quality pitches, Martin Maldonado ranks 60th out of 60 catchers. So he's not helping in stealing strikes at all for his pitchers. The strike rate for Martin Maldonado is 40.9%. And the only part of the quadrant that Martin Maldonado is above 50% are pitches located on the outside corner for right-handed batters, which is considered zone 16. So he's not helping stealing strikes.
The most important zone, Pedro Grifol will let you know.
I'm sure it is the most important part of the strike zone.
Korey Lee is actually above average of the most important zone because he's right under the strike zone for a sinker ball heavy staff. So
yes,
just stipulate.
Nobody wants to hear it.
Just saying.
It is just odd. Like, even part of the soundbite from Grifol, it's a really good balance to not have to overload Korey right now. It's a really good balance. I can't stress that enough. I know people want to see Korey play every single day, but that's not in his best interest right now. In reality, not in ours either. Are you sure about that, Pedro? Like, for a team, I know they've been playing better. They're 14-30. But at some point, this becomes about player development more than trying to win games. And Martin Maldonado's not helping you win games. And I don't think Maldonado's going to make any of these young pitchers. Oh, wait, they don't really have any young pitchers right now throwing. So shouldn't Korey Lee get most of the playing time to develop more so you know if he's actually going to be catcher number one in future seasons? It's just, I still don't think Grifol understands what the assignment is in 2024. Or maybe he's being stubborn, Jim, and he doesn't want to accept what the assignment
or just really likes Maldonado, and as maybe a former catcher, like he just feels like there's some kind of honor to the position, or like a priority that, a code you live by. And so like he honors that. But, it reminds me a little bit of like Brian Ramos and him showing up and, him being the best option to play at third base. And I thought that Grifol's been pretty reasonable about it by saying like, he's going to play every day. He's done some good things. We can't say that he's going to be the long-term third baseman right now, but we're going to give him every opportunity to see what he can do. And it seems like Lee could get the same kind of praise, or at least, kind of small vote of confidence by saying, yeah, he's outplaying what we thought, our original plans. We're going to push him a little bit, see how he responds. It's not going to be a permanent thing, but, we do think he's earned a little bit more run here. So let's see what he does. Like, that's all that you would think you have to say without saying, yeah, we're going to overload him and he's going to start 120 games now. And if, he falls apart, it's your fault, which is what it feels like. He's immediately like putting the slider all the way to the extreme when it comes to playing time, when I think fans would be happy with hearing like, yeah, he's playing like a credible major league catcher. So we might start treating him like one.
He did pipe in that Ramos missed the hit and run sign when the question was, how is he doing with his injury? Which was unique.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
Bedside manner.
He still got the third.
Maybe he would have gotten the third without, running so hard that he hurt himself if he was already in motion. Would seem to be the implication.
Sure.
Or maybe he would have pulled up lame around second. Yeah, who knows?
Sure. Yeah. This is the White Sox we're talking about. Sure. I don't think it really matters too much an effort on them getting lower half injuries. But no, we'll see what happens for the White Sox in the upcoming month. I'm sure it'll still be a 50-50 split. Is Max Stassi alive? Is he playing games in Charlotte?
Nope.
No?
No.
Okay. All right.
He's alive, I think. Not playing games.
He is alive.
So I think they would say something if he wasn't.
I hope so. So this debate will continue, even though for the White Sox, for everything to consider, like when Pedro Grifol says it's not in Korey Lee's best interest to play more, and it's not in the White Sox best interest for him to play more, Pedro Grifol's wrong. It is in Korey Lee's best interest to play more, because he's a professional baseball player who wants to play if he can every single day. And I do think it is in the White Sox best interest for Lee to play more, no matter if you are team player development or team, let's try to win more games and be interesting in 2024. Korey Lee gives the White Sox the best chance of winning today and in the future. Martin Maldonado doesn't do anything that you could quantify well. Except Pedro Grifol loves him. That's why he keeps playing. Now, a happier topic to discuss. Erick Fedde and Garrett Crochet, man. And we talked about this in the last episode, Jim. A reason to be optimistic for White Sox fans is that when you look at an upcoming schedule and you see Fedde and Crochet pitching the same series, White Sox fans should feel confident that the team could win those games. No matter how odd that sounds, especially with how poor this defense can play and how bad they can run the bases, and this is the league's worst offense, Fedde and Crochet have been on a heater, especially Erick Fedde. In his last 6 starts, the White Sox are 5-1, and for my fellow sports bettors, the White Sox are still perfect. They're 9-0 against the spread when Erick Fedde starts games. It is 13 scoreless straight innings for Fedde, in which he's only allowed 9 hits, and he's struck out 9. He's got a 2.60 ERA. And here is the wild thing, Jim. So on Fangraphs, Fedde's WAR is 0.9 because of his FIP. It's 3.88. That's a pretty big gap between his 2.60 ERA, but a 3.88 FIP is great for someone like Erick Fedde. Erick Fedde's WAR on Baseball Reference is 2.3. He leads the American League. That's right. Erick Fedde, according to BaseballReference.com, is leading the American League in pitcher WAR. And Chris Getz and Brian Bannister look like geniuses now, more like geniuses every start that Fedde makes, Jim. It's just been incredible.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head when it comes to contracts of his size, 2 years, $15 million. When the White Sox shopped in that price range, during the Hahn and Williams era, especially like later on, they got terrible returns. Like they got great returns on, say, like Johnny Cueto, but that was a minor league deal who just showed up and happened to deliver the best baseball of his, post Reds career, I think, for at least one glorious season, then all fell apart. But like when thinking about the guys who showed up and were paid roughly that amount of money to be like decent major league players, which is the roughly the idea, the expectations. Like I think Wellington Castillo got 2 and 15 and was terrible, and also got suspended during that. But like the White Sox haven't been great, to put it I guess generously, at shopping in this price range. So I think it's very encouraging that one gets shopped in a different market, because the White Sox generally speaking, ignored Asia, whether it was the Japanese, Korean born players or the American players who found success over there. Like, they didn't have scouts over there or just weren't interested in those players that presented some decent buy low opportunities, at least some upside for the price. So to see Getz take over and sign a guy like Fedde, who, maybe because of the Bannister connections in terms of like workouts with Logan Webb, but at least, finding a new market to explore and finding a new way to spend 2 years and $15 million. Like, that was encouraging in and of itself. So to see Fedde delivering like on the highest end of those expectations is really probably the single best development of the Getz tenure so far. Like, I can't think of any other one that comes close. There's some other encouraging areas, but basically like immediate returns, it's Fedde far and away. So that's, every time he starts, I'm still kind of getting over the lefties taking him deep, like just the lack of like a truly overpowering arsenal. Like when you see Garrett Crochet succeed, you get how he does it. When you see Fedde do it, not quite sure. There's a little bit of like imbalance, some soft contact, broken bats, etc. But you think like, oh, they might figure him out. And it seems like it's going in the opposite direction. Like they're figuring him out less and less. Like they had him figured out and then no longer.
Yeah, lefties against Fedde are hitting .215 with a .270 on base percentage and slugging .374. That's a .643 OPS. And righties, there's not that big gap. Righties are having a .605 OPS against Erick Fedde. So after his start against the Nationals, where he was excellent once again, James, did he share what the secret of success has been? Because, like I mentioned, in his last 6 outings, not only has he been great for the White Sox, but it's starting to garner some national attention. Joe Sheehan in his newsletter wrote that Erick Fedde looks like a number 3 starter. He's priced as a number 5 starter, and he's signed for next year for just $7.5 million. If the White Sox are willing to flip him, he's their best trade chip, even better than the oft-injured Luis Robert. So did Fedde impart any wisdom or any of the secret sauce to you, James, and what's been working for him?
Post game the other day was more about sticking it to his old team exactly as he hoped to. Something we talked about recently was, after that Cleveland start where he gave up 3 home runs, all the lefties, you really saw his cutter kind of take over against left-handers. And then, with it kind of going inside on left-handers, it almost acts like his sinker does the right-handers a little bit, where it gives him that pitch to like back them off the plate, and then he can set everything else up on it. Whereas sinker ballers like tend to struggle against left-handers because their movement on it will go into the left-handed barrel or just run back over the plate so often that you kind of have to be perfect with it, as the way he typified it. He really, you initially thought like, all right, this is a sinker sweeper guy and he's going to be, kind of in trouble when he faces Cleveland and Minnesota, but he really can flip his approach as needed when he faces those sorts of lineups, and he just works inside of the cutter, and then he can set up and he can throw his split change and he can throw his sinker off of it almost as like these, the sinker isn't an off speed pitch, but it's like he sets it up as almost like the way you would set up a changeup, and like, I jammed you inside with the cutter and now I'm going away with the sinker that you're no longer leaning out to get. So he's
like Garrett Crochet's like 92 mile per hour changeup, kind of does the same as a sinker.
Right. So he's doesn't have like this signature weapon the way like Garrett Crochet's fastball just like commands all the attention of the opposition, and it's more about just like doing just enough to set it up to play like it should. But he's got kind of a cohesive arsenal that he can command with his new delivery, so to speak. Not new delivery, but like he's embracing the fact that he's kind of a sidewinding guy, whereas he was kind of following the old school pitching bromides. You got to get over the top of the ball, you've got to spin a four seamer, you got to do all this, and more like I'm worked side to side, but I just need to give myself the tools to work to each side. So it's not like, and it's almost like something you have to watch 6 to 8 starts to appreciate, because it's not like, oh, he's got this one weapon and he's got this best pitch, he's got like this best stuff metric on this one thing, but he's got something, he's got an arsenal finally that kind of coheres in a way to any type of hitter he can face. So he's just not super vulnerable to any part of the order that's going to give him trouble, like or make it like untenable for him to face it 2-3 times in a way that maybe more overpowering but less fully realized pitchers would be. And he's 31 years old. It's taken him a while. Sent him overseas to figure it out. But he's certainly in the best spot he's ever been in his career. And the prudent thing is probably for them to sell high on it. I think there's a little bit of like dollars per WAR analysis and saying that he's a better trade asset than Robert. I think Robert's he's an easier guy to trade and get good stuff for than Robert. But I think if Robert is at his best and, you're willing to set up or eat some costs to, make the prospect package a little bit higher, maybe that's the biggest, most transformative trade you can pull off of. But I certainly see what Joe's saying in the sense that it's really easy for them to get a really good return and not complicated in terms of salary allotment for them to do it, where that's probably maybe the more exciting thing for us to get hyped about this summer than hopefully Robert can get healthy really fast and get everyone convinced that he's like a long-term asset again, which might be harder to reconcile.
Yeah, when it comes to lefties, through 3 starts, lefties were slugging .571 against him since 278.
And it was right off the heels of that Cannon start where he got like just tuned up in Minnesota, where he was like, man, I was throwing really good changes, but they're just leaning out and like crushing all of them. It's like, yeah, you got to throw the fastball up inside, man. They know that's your weapon. So for him to like kind of do that right on the heels of that, I thought was really interesting. And something that's kind of like just unique to baseball is how you can see like attack plans evolve over series that I find I know Jim's a fellow regular season baseball enthusiast, but that's the sort of thing that like I like observing in real time play out.
Well, we'll see how long Erick Fedde stays with the White Sox. The only reason why the White Sox wouldn't trade Erick Fedde before the deadline is because he's cheap, $7.5 million for next season, and he could help lead a White Sox rotation going to next year. But I'm with you, James. It makes the most logical sense for the White Sox to sell Erick Fedde high. And with this upcoming stretch, if he can continue this heater that he's currently on, I have to imagine more and more teams, especially contenders that are in great shape right now, would be calling Chris Getz about and asking what it will take to acquire Erick Fedde, because to their benefit, he's also cheap going to next year. Maybe the White Sox don't get a top 100 prospect, but I think they could at least get a top 150 prospect and continue to add into their farm system, as the outlook for the 2025 White Sox is not very good. But man, Erick Fedde, pleasant surprise. Does Fedde qualify for comeback player of the year?
I would think.
Yeah, he might be the leader right now in the clubhouse for that award, but he's going to be the White Sox All-Star representative if he's still on the White Sox going to the All-Star break. We're going to take a quick moment for a word from our sponsors, but coming up next, let's talk about the next brutal stretch of schedule for the Chicago White Sox, as it starts with the trip to the Bronx, next on the Sox Machine podcast.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. The Chicago White Sox are on a road trip to New York and Toronto for the next 6 games, so if you are traveling with the team, make sure to check out prices on Game Time before buying to take advantage of flash sales. Also keep in mind that summer is quickly approaching, and we all know that Chicago has big bands making stops for their tour, and the Chicago Sky have started their regular season, which will be a hot ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code Sox Machine for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code Sox Machine for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. As I mentioned in the intro, welcome to hell, White Sox fans. In the next 39 games, the combined winning percentage for the Chicago White Sox opponents, .556. Over a 162 game season, that's a 90-72 win-loss record. The White Sox are scheduled to face 4 of the current division leaders in Major League Baseball, the Orioles, the Brewers, the Mariners, and Dodgers. They'll be facing 3 current wildcard teams in the Yankees, a makeup game against the Braves, and 2 games against the Cubs at Wrigley Field. Out of the 39 games, the White Sox have 18 home games to 21 road games, and boy, the White Sox have been awful on the road this season. They are 4-16 on the road in 2024. That is a .200 winning percentage, but they do have 3 wins on the road since Tommy Pham has joined the White Sox to come full circle. James, what do we think of this upcoming stretch of games? Because Tommy Pham, he notices it. As he mentioned post-game, he saw the schedule. He knows that this is a pretty tough stretch for the White Sox. I'm going to assume that everybody else in the White Sox is oblivious to what is on the schedule, and they're just going to say the cliche things that they're taking it day to day. But this is an incredibly tough stretch. We would, in past podcast seasons, say this is the White Sox gauntlet of the season, but this seems to be a little tougher than a gauntlet for the White Sox, so that's why I'm referring this upcoming schedule is a hellscape. But for the White Sox, the next 39 games, what do you think about this stretch?
It's not who you play, it's when you play them. Isn't that the universal truth around here?
Yes.
And
nobody wants to play the White Sox, right? Because they're red hot.
They're pitching really well, and they just excised their most struggling starter from the rotation, so that could help. That at least puts them in a position to play close games, theoretically, in line with the animating purpose of the season was that we're going to be competitive and out play people on the margins in a way that gives us a chance. Having the 30th ranked defense by DRS kind of undercuts that a little bit, but Toronto's not really that good. The Cubs are incredibly injured. Like, they're one of the teams that's up on that slate. I think the Brewers are falling back to earth a little bit. I don't think it's impossible for them to win series in this stretch. The Mariners' offense is really hit or miss, like every offense, but literally them. The Astros, we probably thought are probably this gauntlet, are only a couple games better than the Sox at all. The Detroit Tigers haven't scored in 2 days, and they were playing the Marlins. I think there's holes in this gauntlet that make it not as maybe fearsome as it looked. The Diamondbacks haven't really gotten off the start that we thought they would coming into the year. Like, yeah, there's a tough series. There's potential for them to get wiped off the field or swept, but it doesn't look as impossible maybe as it did preseason, where we kind of thought about maybe our expected outlet for these teams, and the White Sox don't look as hopeless as they were in the 3-22 stretch. So I think it can be better than the way they started the season. I don't think it's going to levy another 3-22 stretch on them, but we'll see. I do want to share that during the break I looked up the Comeback of the Year award, and it was first developed as a co-sponsorship with Viagra. So think about that, Erick Fedde, when you're clutching that in your hands.
Oh man, Jim, what do you think about this upcoming stretch?
I see the potential for the White Sox creating some team meetings for other teams like the Blue Jays. 2 series against them in 2 weeks while they're down reminds me a little bit of the Cardinals situation of just a team that underperformed last year or was like never quite got to the heights they thought. And this year, more disappointing. You're seeing maybe some fault lines emerge. And so like the White Sox have like a chance to get John Schneider fired here. Like I wonder if Charlie Montoyo is just like rubbing his hands together, like waiting for that domino to fall because that's who replaced him. But yeah, that's, the Blue Jays I think are one team that I wonder if the White Sox could topple just by, winning a series at the wrong time or like, God forbid a sweep or God willing a sweep, depending on which side you're looking at it. So that's the series I'm gravitating towards. Also the Astros, I guess I'm curious like whether Jose Abreu will be back for it or whether just, he'll be still taking hacks in, unofficial games in order to preserve his minor league-less career record. But that's kind of a little bit too far down the line. Immediately, that's the Blue Jays, I think, are the fascinating one because if they continue to be as uninspired as they've been, and like they've gotten some good breakouts or some good turnarounds individually, and yet they're still just, their run differential, -47, like second worst to the White Sox in the American League. Which is pretty startling. Like the Astros are, somehow 30 runs better when it comes to run differential. So those are the 2 series I want to see early and might kind of dictate how it feels for the White Sox. Because like if they get blasted by the Yankees or the Orioles, like, those are 2 very good teams. Enjoy watching like Juan Soto do his thing and Adley Rutschman. Like that, I'll be watching those series more as baseball fan. Wearing a baseball fan cap. The Rob Lowe MLB cap is how I'll be wearing. Watching that. But like the Blue Jays, that's one I think where their ability to capitalize or take advantage of teams while they're down or not figuring it out, or like if the Cardinals look to the White Sox as a turnaround and then win the series in St. Louis and they're besides themselves, like that's kind of the factor I want to see the White Sox try to create in these gaps that James talked about.
You are going to have Fedde and Crochet pitching those games in Toronto for that series. So as I mentioned before the break, you have to be confident when Fedde and Crochet make those starts because that gives the White Sox the best opportunities to win those games. And then Fedde and Crochet are also scheduled to pitch the last 2 games against the Orioles in that home series, and then 4 games that go over Memorial Day weekend, and then the Blue Jays come back into town. The Blue Jays are 19-23. They're already 8.5 games back of the Orioles. They're already 5.5 games back of the wild card. So to the point of James and Jim, if the White Sox, like looking ahead, if they could win that series on the road, I think you're right, Jim. Like team meetings and then serious pressure on the Blue Jays because they're already far behind. They're going to be coming up to some contract and financial decisions that they'll have to make. And that is another organization that really hasn't met expectations, or at least met the hype that was surrounding that Blue Jays team. But they also play in a very, very tough division. And it can get a lot worse for the Blue Jays, especially if they can't take advantage of the White Sox. Before the season, I thought the White Sox would go 8-30 in this stretch, but when you add in the Braves rain out into that 39 game mix, I thought they would be 8-31. I don't think they're going to be that bad over the next 39 games. But where I get optimism is for the trade targets. Like if Chris Flexen can still be effective, if Erick Fedde continues to still go on his heater, if Tommy Pham continues to still rake, I have to imagine, James, then other contenders will buy into those performances from the individual players of the White Sox. Like, okay, this is real. They're going to be helpful, and that will make Chris Getz's job a lot easier. If those 3 falter, crash and burn against contenders, well, maybe their trade market is not as robust as Bob Nightingale continues to write in USA Today.
Yeah, like if your shortstop is hurt and Paul DeYoung like hits 2 homers off of you while playing competent defense, like, hey, let's just not let this guy leave town. Like we don't have to. Right. It'd be very easy to stop them. Yeah, I think that they have. I mean, I think they have a healthy suite of options in terms of trade assets, and certainly, um, especially when like DeYoung strikes the as a option just because he plays up the middle and there's always such a need there. Like, and like if last year's version of DeYoung was tradable, then surely this year's version is as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the main things to kind of root for in a dark way. It's not really like as someone is talking to the players all the time, I don't think it's like it's not usually a natural transition of like, yeah, you're playing so well, you're gonna get yourself out of here in no time. Like I'm a prison guard talking to like a model inmate. But it's certainly a way to kind of enjoy things in the short term and also the long of like, hey, this is helping win games and make this team more watchable, and our draft pick situation such that we can't really tank our way to meaningful improvement anyway. So it gives you something to kind of root for and pull for with players that you wouldn't have like really long-term ties to. I also can't stress enough that like rooting for a last place team is hard. Please take every moment you can to enjoy the pleasure of the opposing team absolutely losing their shit when they lose to your team. The Cardinals fans vociferously booing their team off the field after losing 2 out of 3 from the White Sox was amazing. There were like these 2 Sox fans right below the press box who, as the stadium's emptying out and boos are howling down, they just like stood up and like held their Sox hats like aloft for everyone to see. I felt so happy for them, those brave champions in that moment. That's the sort of thing you have to live for. And he's like, I'm a beat writer, and I still just I read the mentions. I read Katie Woo's story like right after that game. The sheer like panic that spreads from just like we lost to this major league team that we don't have respect for is you gotta soak in every moment.
Well, let's see if the White Sox can win another series as they head to the Bronx to face the New York Yankees. The Yankees are currently 28-15. They're tied for first place in the American League East, but they're just percentage points behind the Baltimore Orioles for first overall. They have won their last 2 games. As we are recording this, they are playing a game against the Minnesota Twins, and because it's the Twins, I just assume the Yankees will win. In the last 10, the Yankees are 8-2. Your pitching probables for this series. Now, it's not official on the Yankees side. It's to be determined for the Yankees. But with their last few games, I'm guessing here what could possibly be the Yankee starters for this series. Friday night at 6:05 p.m. Central Time, Mike Clevenger will take the ball for the White Sox. Nestor Cortes, that is his spot, coming up against the White Sox for Friday night. Saturday afternoon, this is a 12:05 p.m. Central Time start, so keep that in mind. Early start on Saturday. Brad Keller, who replaces Michael Soroka in the rotation, will take the ball against Lucas Gill of the Yankees. And then on Sunday, May 19th, 12:35 p.m. Central Time start, Chris Flexen takes the ball against old friend Carlos Rodon, could possibly be making a start against the White Sox. And Jim, I'm hoping that happens, because did Rodon make a start against the White Sox when he was at the Giants, or did he just miss? I feel like the White Sox have yet to face Carlos Rodon.
Yeah, Rodon missed the White Sox, or the White Sox missed Rodon when he was with San Francisco, and then Yankees were a mess last year. So he's finally back at it and looking pretty good. Like, maybe the worst thing about his season so far was the new jerseys and how he just sweat through them. It was kind of like the poster boy for just how bad the material was. But no, it looks like himself, more or less. Maybe not like the huge strikeout rates that he had with the White Sox in his last year and with the Giants in his big make good year. But otherwise, like, he's throwing strikes, getting strikeouts, limiting hits, like kind of the whole thing. And it's kind of nice to see him do that, because when he signed that big of a deal, like a 6-year deal, and then immediately are terrible and hurt for it, especially in a market like New York. Yeah, I don't doubt Rodon's ability to handle that kind of pressure, because he's always seemed like impervious to it, or that he knows how to tune it out and doesn't mind being disliked while he's in the process of tuning it out. So, like, I didn't worry about him in that regard. I just worried about him being able to physically hold up and bounce back from missing that kind of year and overcome that first impression. But so far he's doing it, and like the Yankees as a whole have a pretty good 1-5 and pretty good team coming together. 1-9, 1-5, and when you have Soto basically looking like the front runner for the AL MVP, like so much the better.
And Aaron Judge has been red hot. In his last 15 days, in his last 12 games, Aaron Judge has 4 homers and 4 doubles and OPS over 1,000 in that stretch, in that 12-game stretch. Giancarlo Stanton doesn't care. He's going to swing as hard as he possibly can, and we'll talk about the batted data in a moment here. But Stan has 3 homers in his last 10 games, 17 strikeouts to 1 walk, though. That's just Stan's game this year. Just swing as hard as possible at any pitch in the strike zone. James, the switch for the White Sox, we talked about in our previous podcast episode while you were away. We pondered about the possibility of swapping out Brad Keller into the rotation for Michael Soroka. This came to fruition. What are the White Sox hoping here for Brad Keller in the starting rotation? And will Soroka be piggybacking off of Keller in these starts?
If the opportunity allows, I think basically any short start or game where they're getting tanked, that, hey, someone just finished these last 3-4 innings, we don't care how, I think is probably the slot he goes into. Keller should be fully stretched out. So like if he's rolling, I don't think it's like he's a 5 and diver purely. He's thrown 100 pitches in an outing this season, at least in Charlotte. But Keller, he's throwing his changeup a lot more as another thing to get people out in front and roll over. He's racking up one of the higher ground ball rates, at least early through this kind of meaningless small sample of innings. A lot of it pitched in low leverage, but at least in terms of like what you want a Brad Keller to look like, they've recreated it, even if it's not like with maybe some of the mid 90s he's had in the past, but more 92, 93 so far. I think it's an interesting wrinkle. I certainly think someone like Brad Keller should mix it up as much as possible, but they're just hoping kind of a back end ground ball guy that he's been, at least in portions. It's hard to say what the signature Brad Keller season was, because like maybe his best year was either the COVID season where he had like 9 starts, or his best year was the Rule 5 season where his rookie year, where he became a starter kind of halfway through, and we didn't really see how that held up through the year. But even the 2019 guy who was kind of a mid-4 ERAs person eating a lot of innings, I think that'd be perfectly fine with them. It's more just like this is a lower tier project than restoring all-star Michael Soroka to what he was, but it's hard to say we didn't get a meaningful look at what he was doing and come to a very reasonable conclusion. I will say, like, Soroka was really happy with like his fastball command in his last start, and he hit 95 a couple times for the first time all season. And he was adamant that he thought there was stuff in his leg load, stuff in his pelvic tilt that could get an extra mile of velocity, that he wasn't going to just be a 91, 92 guy all year. So he's got at least a little bit of signs he can cling to of saying like, this was coming together. Something that both he and Grifol said is that, he throws pitches that look like what he had in 2019 at times. Is just not the same consistency. I would say that's kind of a lot of the story with a lot of people, and it's not necessarily this one kind of big fluke with him, but I think he's got some signs of getting stronger in terms of just physically back to himself over the season, where it's not just like, we don't know what to do, so let's put you out here. But certainly when you have kind of a ready-made starter pitching pretty well in low leverage, and this guy kind of like not getting through 6 innings anytime, or not really being able to keep fewer than 4 runs off the board, I think it's a pretty logical choice. And I think Soroka acknowledged that in his when he talked to us Wednesday morning, which was, he hit all the right notes. He was pissed, but he also didn't think it was unreasonable, and he was also motivated. So he responded the way he was supposed to it. Seems pretty harmless, and it seems, I think probably the one thing that people are looking for is like, they'd love to see Nastrini or Cannon or somebody that quotes a little bit more long term of what we're supposed to watch than Keller. But I think the Sox are pretty set on the split of like, we're going to try to develop trade assets first half of the season, and you're going to see as much prospects as you can handle second half. So we're not really going to stress out on looking ahead to future years in the first half of the season a ton.
That's a really good point. We'll see on how Brad Keller holds up against the White Sox. We'll see just how the starting rotation holds up against the New York Yankees in the Bronx. And before we go, just quickly want to chat about this because we haven't taken a deep dive, and usually we do when new metrics do come out on Baseball Savant. But I want this requires a little bit more investigation, and that is the bat tracking metrics that are now available on Baseball Savant. It's been the talk about the league when it comes to square up rates, barrel speeds, blast now, which every time I go into this data, James, it is like I'm Alice and I'm falling down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. And I get lost, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, where did the last 30 minutes go? I get really distracted because Baseball Savant and Major League Baseball, the guys did a fantastic job, especially with the graphs and everything. And it can be a little bit data overload. But when it comes to average bat speed and fast swing rate and all of these metrics, have you got a chance to talk to the White Sox? Have you heard from any White Sox players about this type of data that now has been made public?
No, not really. I've been talking more to like scouts and evaluators about it, and listening to a lot of their like caveats and grouchiness about it.
Why grouchy?
Alex Chamberlain with Fangraphs, who did really interesting research with the approach angle stuff, and has like a really great approach angle leaderboard that he maintains personally. He had a tweet that I thought was really interesting, is that the max speed levels are that for bat speed swings tend to hover around 88 miles an hour, which is something around the territory of like bad fastballs or kind of hangers. It's that the band of pitches where you see these guys like really load up and like let loose and get their A swing off is not necessarily going to be what you see them to fight off like 97, 98. So and something I think will probably continue to evolve as we dive into it more is like different types of swings work in different types of situations, and we can kind of get ourselves into some traps analyst wise if we kind of flatten all swings to like what's the best A swing all the time, because obviously I think there are obviously like examples of that they've already acknowledged, was just like pouring into like why Luis Arraez is simultaneously the best contact hitter and the slowest swing, and you see the leaderboard for the slow swings, and it's like a lot of good hitters. And even when it's somebody like Nicky Lopez, it's like someone who's really good at making contact. So there's like obviously fast swings and bat speed are great tools and great currency, and probably lead to like some of your biggest power outputs, and why someone like Luis Roberts at the top of the leaderboard and also produces insane exit velos all the time, which are obviously incredibly useful. But there's a lot of gray area in between. And I think probably where this is a fan base that is most adept to really appreciate it, because we watch Paul Konerko for 15 years like use different swings all the time, mid at bat, pitch to pitch, that there's it reminds me, it almost feels like a little bit like when defensive independent pitching stats first came out, where it's like it's really fascinating, it's really reordering our thinking a lot of things, but we're going to wind up learning a lot of nuance in between over the next 10, 15 years even, that we're probably not even equipped to unpack right now.
Jim, what have your thoughts been about the new data set that's available?
It's tough to write about just because it seems like, day after day, MLB.com has come out with like, well, here's one way to use it, or here's one judgment not to rush to. And so I feel like I'm just waiting for them to look at all the mistakes everybody else is making. And then I'll learn from those rather than throw myself headlong into like the White Sox extremes. But it is funny, like just when you sort the team leaderboards, like the White Sox are like fast swing rate, dead last. Swing length, dead last. Like when you talk about Tommy Pham saying a lot of first pitch rollovers and you're not getting off your A swing early in the counts, when the White Sox have like an attack mindset when it comes to being aggressive, but they don't have an attack swing. And that kind of bears it out. Like, I don't know if Pham, is looking at you reference exit velocity, so maybe he's somebody who will get into this data in terms of just like what swings he uses when. But that's what jumped out to me was in concert with the Pham quote. Like, yeah, it's kind of like a lot of swinging, but also not a lot of purposeful swinging or on average. Also, the fact that they had the lowest swing length when looking at how many short players the White Sox have on the roster, like when they're fielding a roster with Lopez and Benintendi and Mendick and Fletcher and like a lot of shorter guys on that. But then I looked it up, and this is a case of like not wanting to speak before I really understand stuff. Andrew Vaughn, above average swing length, longer swing than Gavin Sheets, who has at least 5 inches on him. So
at least,
yeah,
5 inches.
So that's the kind of thing where like, some assumptions I had, when it comes to swing length, Andrew Vaughn, of course, short swing length. Ha ha ha. It turns out, nope. Joke would have been on me if I wrote that.
Yeah. My early observation is that we've been harping that the White Sox just have a power outage, and for a team that plays a guarantee rate field, they just don't have a team or a set of position players that could take advantage, especially in the summer, hitting at guarantee rate field and hitting for power. And there is a pretty strong correlation here when it comes to barrel speed and power. And that's why they have created this new term called blast, which is squaring up a pitch and meeting a certain amount of barrel speed to qualify as a blast. And the White Sox right now just have too many slow bats, but like moving ahead, looking into the future for the White Sox, the types of players that they draft, the types of players that they sign internationally, especially in the Major League Baseball draft, Perfect Game has been posting barrel speeds now the last couple of years for the prep players that have been participating in the showcases. So Major League Baseball teams are now collecting data and tracking on how certain players, since they were 16 years old, how they've been improving their barrel speed if they get drafted out of high school or if they go into college. Now universities with all these hitting labs and all these Twitter accounts from the baseball analytics team tweeting this type of data out, they're going to be able to have like a 4 or 5 year data set, especially if these high schoolers go into college, seeing in how they've been improving their barrel speed and what they are going to be drafting and bringing into their farm system. So to James's point, like, I think our conversations and talking points 10 years from now, when it comes to barrel speed, we're going to be a lot more educated than where we are today. But I do feel like for a lot of teams, and one team in particular, Saris of The Athletic wrote about this, the Los Angeles Dodgers, this is incredibly important for them because the last 2 seasons have been sending their hitters in the offseason to hitting labs to improve their bat speed. So if the Dodgers are doing it, the old adage, maybe you should be doing it too, White Sox, because there's so many slow bats. And I know this season is a lost season, but moving ahead and looking into the future, James and Jim, that's kind of like where I'm going to be focusing on is how are guys improving this, because there seems to be key metrics here early for the types of swings that generate the most power. And I am a firm believer the White Sox, when they want to contend, they're going to have to hit for more power.
I will add in that if you follow Tommy Pham on Twitter, you will know that he is on Savant all the time.
All right.
And frequently sending questions about things to Petriella.
Okay.
Awesome. Like that guy. I got to get a jersey. Fanatics, you need better jersey options because they're all awful right now. In the White Sox team store. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. The White Sox have Thursday off, and James is off from traveling for the next 2 series as the White Sox travel to the Bronx and in Toronto. But we'll still be recapping all of the games for you guys and writing about the White Sox for this upcoming road trip to visit the Yankees and the Blue Jays. You could read that work on soxmachine.com, and we'll have a new podcast episode for you guys on Monday morning to recap what happens between the White Sox and the Yankees. But if you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can now also listen to the Sox Machine podcast on YouTube and YouTube Music. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. And you can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at Sox Machine_Josh. If you would like full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and also our preview coverage of the 2024 Major League Baseball Draft, it's just $5 to gain full access. You can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. You guys help keep the lights on, allow us to send James out to travel and cover the White Sox for us, and being an excellent beat reporter. You've been doing an awesome job, James. So if you want that access, and I know that there's an upcoming P.O. Sox mailbag, right, Jim?
Correct. If you are a supporter at the $10 10-word tier, I still have a little bit of time to submit a question. We'll probably post it on Friday during make use of the off day to catch up. So use that off day to get a question in, and we will do our best to answer it.
Again, you can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Everyone is talking about magnesium. It's all you hear about. But why? What do we know about magnesium? Well, magnesium is the number one mineral that 75% of Americans are deficient in. If you are a woman over 35, magnesium will help you rediscover balance, energy, and vitality. Magnesium supports more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those involved in hormonal balance. From functional medicine doctors to mental well-being and female hormone experts, we all know that magnesium is the one mineral to improve all aspects of well-being and health. But which one? Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, the trusted choice recommended by leading experts with 7 best-absorbed forms of magnesium to ensure your body receives the support it needs for overall well-being. Go to bioptimizers.com/balance today and use code BALANCE10 for 10% off. Support your journey to wellness at bioptimizers.com/balance. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, your foundation to optimal health and vitality.